and it's Cap.
Guten Morgen.
Yes, wasn't he a left back at Leipzig back in the 90s?
Who's that?
Guten Morgen.
Oh, got me early on a Friday. You got
me. We went two directions, and I know that this will surprise you early on here as we get ready for our Friday free kick with MF Parkhurst on the Twitters and our friends at Beyond Goals Mentoring. All right, so Easter, we all know that it is a marketing opportunity for some. And I was going down the aisle of the soft drinks, which I know it's probably someplace that you don't go when you go grocery shopping. And Pepsi had a Peeps flavored Pepsi for the Easter season. I was instantly repulsed. I don't know what your thoughts are on Peeps in general or Pepsi or Peeps flavored Pepsi, but we kind of went off the rails about maybe Pepsi went just a couple of steps too far with their marketing.
Peeps in general are disgusting. Pepsi flavored Peeps take it a step further. So
then Peeps flavored Pepsi, an actual drink.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peeps is not for me. I think they're disgusting.
Because, I mean, for me, it tastes like the aluminum can that if you poured Peeps into a Pepsi can, it would taste like. So basically, you're drinking what tastes like aluminum in the first place inside an aluminum can. So that was one of the things that we were getting into this morning. And the other one, apparently, the parlay kits have leaked. And, once again, Atlanta, I like the darker version. Kind of looks like topography of the surface when it comes to the seas and things like that. How many of your jerseys over time have you kept from whether it's promotions or teams or things like that? How many of your jerseys in your career have you kept for one reason or
another? I've got at minimum one from each team, but more than that. I probably have at least two from each team that I've played on. I kept all my Champions League jerseys when I played in Champions League in Europe, that is, not CONCACAF. And then a bunch of national team jerseys. So I've probably got, 15-ish of my own jerseys.
Okay. Now, are they all framed or are they just hanging in the closet?
Actually, that has been one of my things that I've needed to do. It actually is like outfit somewhere in the house to frame stuff. I have very, very little in the house. Like, you wouldn't know there was an ex-professional athlete that lives here in the house unless you came and saw these random two balls behind me. So I need to put some jerseys up, but just haven't figured out where and when and how to do that and all that stuff. So
okay. So folks want to know what the golf hole is on the wall behind you in the frame.
Yeah, common mistake. That is actually a corner flag
on
a soccer pitch.
Okay.
And Wake Forest soccer field. A teammate of mine at Wake who played in the league for a little bit and is a photographer, he took that picture, and like the writing on the side of it is, paraphrasing here, but something like our biggest lessons at Wake Forest were here on the soccer field.
Okay, got it. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of things to talk about from the past week with Major League Soccer, one involving Atlanta United, one involving Red Bulls, and I want to kind of steer the conversation from those items in the news to mentoring and how you can have conversations about these things. First one, let's talk about Atlanta United. And Brad's now out 10 to 12 weeks. And when you lose a captain like that, I guess we can go any direction you want. It was the second week in a row that Brad got trucked. Second week in a row that there wasn't a card. And it sadly opens the door for players when they see a center ref not respond, as I think that they should in these situations. When you saw what happened to Brad, what went through your mind about A, the incident, and B, the after effects?
Well, for first live, I thought he was making, milking it, making the most of it because he's a goalie and it's Brad. And So that was my first instinct, like, oh, he'll be fine. And then, as he got to, continue to play on, you thought, oh, escaped something there. So, got lucky. When I watch it, I don't think it's a dirty play. I don't think there's any malice in there. I think the guy's making a play on the ball. It's, I can't even think of the defender on Atlanta United that was right there sliding in as well.
Purata was going with
Purata. So it's just a real difficult situation. That's, anytime goalies come out of the box, when they're running one way, defenders and and attackers are running the other way, it's just dangerous. So it's really just unfortunate. Gutted for Brad is, obviously he worked tremendously hard to get back this year off a bad injury, and now he's got to deal with this one. And he's really a guy that hasn't dealt with many injuries. He said that, when he got the Achilles. So it's a tough one, but he's got a good mentality about all this stuff. So he'll come back, as fast as possible. But, it's still a big loss for the team. Obviously, we saw last year that, it didn't go too well on the defensive side. And obviously Miles was out as well. But the goalkeeper position is important. And they make up a lot of points throughout a year if you have a really good one. And so, it's a big opportunity for, I think it's going to be Westberg. So, you got to hope that he comes in and plays well.
And at the same time, Brad has worn the captain's armband, and you lose that voice back there when you lose a captain and that element of vocal backing that is there for you. He's telling folks where to go, telling folks what to do, that force that's back there. And obviously, it'll be interesting to see who's going to be wearing the captain's armband going forward. But when you lose that kind of force back there, what kind of an adjustment is that for a team and for teammates when you don't have that voice that you're used to seeing back there?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think that, it's nice to have that common voice back there and that presence. Not only when times are tough, right, but also like throughout a game where like, okay, I've got my leader back there. He'll come up with a big save. He'll come up with a big moment for us, right? Or he'll calm us down on a corner kick, right? Or have that vocal presence. And Brad's a big dude and he commands the box well, so he's got that as well. And I think everybody just respects Brad for the player and person that he is. So it's important to have those people on the field. And, I think that obviously we all know that because we didn't have as much of that last year, with he and Ozzy out and Miles. So, we just hope that's not a repeat of things for this year because, the season has gotten off to a really good start. And so we just hope that this doesn't affect us so negatively. And that, the one caveat is the goalkeeper has the least influence, in my opinion, as far as leadership wise on the field, just because he's so far away from everybody. So hopefully that'll help at least because, a lot of guys on the field can't hear Brad most of the game, which usually is a good thing. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
When it comes to mentees, I guess I want to talk about opportunity now and not being weighed down by an injury from a key player, still focusing on the task at hand and viewing it also as an opportunity for individuals to step up, whether it's in a captaincy or whether it's in that position that's missed. When you talk to your mentees about opportunity because of a shock moment or because of a long-term injury, what are those conversations like about sticking to the task at hand, turning a negative into a positive, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, we talk like everyone gets a shot at some point, and an opportunity arises. And whether it doesn't matter how that opportunity comes about, you never wish injury upon a teammate or even an opponent or anything. But these things happen. And that's why you have to be ready. That's why you put the training in. That's why, you do the extra work to get that opportunity. And like the guys and the girls that take advantage of those opportunities are the ones that proceed. And I remember when I was playing in Denmark in Nordsjælland, we had this talented young center back, and people didn't know how talented he was yet because he was young. He was probably 17 or so. And I got injured in a game, and I was rarely injured. I got injured in a game, and it was like one of my few muscle injuries throughout my career. And he came in for me, and he played amazing. I was out for like 3 or 4 weeks, and he was tremendous. And then he continued to play, and he ended up on the Danish national team. He transferred to the Premier League after a couple of years. Like, he was tremendous for us. And that's what really pushed me to right back. So it was just a really good example of like a guy taking full advantage of an opportunity, and you never know when those are going to come. Quentin's obviously not a young guy, so he's in a little different situation. But yeah, the mentees, it doesn't matter how or why you get the opportunity; it's what you do with it.
Okay, so for those of us who are Premier League folks, who was it?
Jorez Okori.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because that's a diehard. You're going to have me searching for that one because I couldn't.
Yeah, I think it was Villa he went to.
Okay. All right. Now, the second topic, you can go as deep into it as you want with what happened with Dante Van Zier and Red Bulls. And you can go, like I said, any direction. Like I said, you can go as deep into this as you want, because I think that it's important on the mentee side to discuss behavior and things like that, and professionalism and those kinds of things. But as that situation has developed now with Red Bulls, with Van Zier, as a professional who has played in this league, what were your reactions to what we saw out of Red Bulls? Whether you were looking, it was on your chats or texts on Saturday, as the story has evolved, as the Dante Van Zier story has evolved with Red Bulls, what have been your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. I think that in the heat of it, right, it's very difficult to be a teammate of Van Zier. And, I think that there's the game, but there's, the bigger things that transcend the sport. And, that racism is one of them. And, I think that we all have an obligation now to make sure that we stand up, especially as white guys, right, and as white players, right, to stand up for, against racism, right? When you see these types of things, it's one thing if you've got black players, getting upset about it, right? But we as white players need to take the onus as well, and take that even further. And so, I think that it was disappointing that he continued to play. I think it's disappointing that surely there was a Red Bulls player that heard what he said, right? Because there was a group of people around there. Surely, and now I'm forgetting his name, the San Jose player.
Jeremy
Ebobisse. Surely he wasn't the only player who heard whatever he heard, right? And so I think that if I had heard it, or if I would expect if a Red Bulls player heard it to tell the coach, yeah, I heard it, get him off the field, right? If it was an Atlanta United player when I was playing, I would have done that. And because, like I said, that game in the scheme of the season, in the scheme of life, means very, very little, right? But setting the example of like, hey, this is not tolerated here is way, way more important. Not only on the day, but for the future as well. So, I think that it was a missed opportunity. It was fumbled for sure by the Red Bulls on many parts. And I also think MLS fumbled it. I think that 6 games is not enough, in my opinion. That seems like it's a more than a slap on the wrist, but not a zero tolerance type approach. And I get that the MLSPA is in a difficult situation here because you represent the player. And so in my opinion, though, and maybe some of it is based off of precedents, right? Well, if that's the case, and the next time it happens, the person's going to get 6 games again, right? We then put it into the laws, put it into the rules, right? Hey, a racial slur gets you half a season. I don't know, whatever it is, right? But it's got to be more than 6 games, because that's just crazy. That's not enough. And I'm also like not surprised. I'm not naive to think that racism doesn't exist. I've seen and heard things in locker rooms, especially from foreign players. And by foreign, I mean European and South American, especially. I'm not saying Americans don't say racist stuff, right? But in locker rooms, I'm talking things that some guys say, and they don't even, especially the South Americans, they're so liberal in the way that they say things, where you're like, hey, dude, you cannot say that here. Right? You can't say that out in public. Like, you can't say that stuff, man. Like, this is not acceptable. And so, we've got such a long way to go as a society. And, instances like this is a good way to absolutely, squash it, or try to squash it. And I don't think it went far enough.
When you have your conversations with your mentees, do you have deep conversations about topics like this as well? Is this a part of the dynamic when you interact with your mentees at all?
I don't think we talk about racism per se, but we talk about, how important it is to be a good teammate and a good leader, and, sportsmanship and that type of thing, and learning lessons, and some things more important than wins and losses on a day. We haven't actually touched, I don't think, racism with any mentees, though.
Because, you mentioned how cultures are different and how locker rooms are. And for those who have been in any kind of a sport, I'm sure we've come across those instances of, folks saying things, whether it's, folks just saying things they shouldn't say, regardless of the level of vitriol that's attached to it. We all have those things that we come across in locker rooms and such. And that was why I wanted to ask, because I don't know how the younger athlete today, is learning these kinds of things. And I didn't know if it was something that is in conversation, if they come up to you and talk about these kinds of things. And it's like, hey, I experienced this, can you help me navigate it? And these kinds of things. I didn't know how active these kinds of conversations were with the younger players today, because, as you say, you've been in locker rooms. These younger, athletes and individuals are going to be experiencing these kinds of things. And I didn't know if they were experiencing these kinds of things, to have these kind of conversations already with their mentees who have been through this and can help them navigate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe when we start working more and more with Atlanta United Academy, these things can come up, because, I think the younger generation, is, each generation is getting better and better. And this younger generation, of kids that are 15 and below, especially, right, they're probably naive a bit about it, because, right, they're just so used to being around different races and cultures and all these things. But it is important for them to know, like, there's a right and a wrong, and it doesn't matter your skin color. If you hear right or wrong, if you hear wrong, you need to act and take onus on that, because like I said earlier, right, we've got a bigger onus than, African Americans to, stand up for this type of thing. And so that would be my message to mentees and to younger players, right? Hey, it's more important than being a good teammate to a player, right, and sticking up for them, versus like, hey, what's right or wrong in life and society. And that's where I think the Red Bulls teammates got it wrong, especially for a new player, right? This guy's been in MLS for like 2 minutes. So they shouldn't even have loyalty to him yet, honestly. I honestly, when I was thinking about it, I was like, man, I wonder if they'll give him a full year. I wonder if they'll just terminate his contract. Honestly, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And so then when I see 6 games, it's like,
well, and I mean, there's a lot that I don't think we know. And I think that as we continue to learn more and more and more, I think that 6 may be a benchmark where they can sit there and say, okay, well, we've learned more about this. We've had more folks interview and talk it through. We've got all this other evidence. And so now we can do these additional things. I'm thinking that while they're gathering more evidence, and you mentioned the PA's presence in this as well, that you can only go, so far, because there have been, the Derek Williams tackle with the LA Galaxy. I think Derek only got 6, and that was for an on-field action. You've got what was it, Luis Suarez and spitting and things like that might get you 8, 10, or 11. But I think that right now that 6 plus the PA, and you can't just jump to any kind of a conclusion and sit there and go, well, you're out, because of the legal elements that are attached to it. Although that if you're a parent club, you're going to sit there and you go, I want to try to wash myself of this if this evidence goes a certain way. There are a lot of different things at play here. I think that 6, though, might just be a benchmark and a working point going forward.
Yeah, and that's the problem, and that's what needs to be addressed next. Is because if it happens again this weekend with another player, right, or he's going to only get 6 too, and the next guy's only going to get 6, and it's like, hey, then lessons are not being learned, right? It's got to really freaking hurt, and by hurt I mean like half a season, full season, like something like that.
Gone, goodbye, contract ripped up and disassociated in the whole thing. I would imagine that we get to that, that is probably stuff that's being thought of and considered as we go here. And I didn't mean for this to get as deep as we've gotten this morning when it comes to these kinds of things. But, when it comes to that next generation that you're talking about, these are moments where we can sit here and say, all right, this is something that cannot stand. And it's a workable moment where we can sit here and show the next generation and show ourselves about right and wrong and be reminded about things. And, hey, you've got to stand up in situations where you need to stand up. You can't just stand in a corner or turn your back anymore.
Yeah, totally. It's on us as a society to get rid of this, right? And if it's just Black people that are out there fighting for it, right, it's not going to happen, right? We need all of us to be involved, and I think that's probably what's changed the most, recently, over the past couple of years, right? Is like, okay, hey, we as white people, like, we need to step up and take ownership of this and share the responsibility of getting rid of racism, here in the U.S., worldwide, but obviously we're focused on here.
All right, let's talk about Atlanta United. We talked about Brad a little bit. I know that we kind of went really deep into conversations this morning. When you've been looking at Atlanta United so far in the East, it's been a pretty good start. You're going into an environment in Toronto where it's, what's it like traveling over borders? Because I imagine, for some of us, when we're flying from one place to another, we're in line, we're in customs, we're sitting there and we're handing over our passports or birth certificates, and we're waiting like 9 hours to get something done. And you're having to travel and do this for a living. What's it like traveling over borders and having to keep a mindset of, okay, I've got a game to play. I don't want to stand here in this airport.
Now it's a lot easier, right? Because anytime we flew private into Canada, it was so much easier. And now the teams are all flying private. So it makes it so much easier. A lot of times they'll just bring somebody right there. So as you're deplaning, you can show them your passport and do that thing, and you can just get straight on the bus and go. But back in the day, especially flying through Montreal was a nightmare. Toronto, they would actually, work with you and like give you your own little space to go through, right? Montreal was just like, nah, screw you guys, stand in with everybody. And that airport was always a mess and always crowded. It would take forever to get through Montreal.
Well, and story time with John. I was doing a story on like the last weekend the Expos were playing at Olympic Stadium before they were going to move and go to DC. And I had all of my TV equipment with me. as I'm checking in, because you got a big TV camera and a big old lunky thing, and you don't want to have it sitting in a on a plane or getting jostled in the luggage part of the plane. So I had it with me on the plane, and I'm carrying it with me with my carry-on. And I go to, and this is in Montreal, and so I'm at the airport there, and the customs agent, he asks you business or pleasure and these kinds of things. And I've got a big TV camera, literally a big TV camera that's about 2.5 feet wide and 1.5 feet tall. And I'm like, here for business. What are you doing? I'm here to shoot the Expos game. Here to do a story. On what? I'm here to do television. This is a television camera. I'm here to do interviews and do a story and take it back to Atlanta. Literally, you could see the brain trying to process what was going on and how can I make this more difficult for this guy when he's got a TV camera, he says he's a reporter, and he's doing a story about Olympic Stadium. Literally, I was standing there for 10 minutes trying to explain that I'm working. This was not a fun trip. I'm working with TV equipment here.
Sounds a bit shady, John. I don't know.
Yeah, TV camera. Yeah, I'm just here having fun, and I'm lugging a 20-pound TV camera with me to have fun on the whole thing. So yeah, I am right there with you. Was Montreal the toughest airport and the least cooperative airport you've ever flown into as a pro?
Yes, without a doubt, the worst.
I mean, even through international duty or international play or anything like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Montreal's the worst.
Wow. All right. So, all right, let's remember Toronto here. When you go into Toronto, what sticks in your mind about Toronto FC, playing at BMO, those kinds of things? What Atlanta United memories do you have, or Columbus?
Cold and windy. I feel like that the stadium's like really close to the water. I feel like it's always windy there. And obviously cold, but a good atmosphere. Stinks that you have to wait for 2 national anthems. But Toronto's, they're an average MLS team right now, if I'm being completely honest. So, as a fan looking at it, I'm like, Atlanta United can go there and win. Losing Brad, I still, doesn't change my picture of that, of like, no, you can go there and win, right? And we saw that when Toronto came to the Bends and sat back and let us have it. And obviously we tied the game 1-1, which is disappointing, but we're a better team than them.
But when
better teams don't always win, but we should. So
it's like the whole Marshawn Lynch thing. I'm here just so I don't get fined. Basically, that's what Toronto was like. Yeah, we're just showing up. We're going to get the point. We're trying to get out of here in one piece.
Yeah.
With Toronto, it's like I have, and this one last thing, I guess, before we go, because I don't want to keep you into any kind of stoppage time. But it seems to me, ever since Bob Bradley came back from Swansea, where he got screwed, and I'll be the first person to say it, that 85 days you're promised a January window and you don't even get that. That he's had a chip on his shoulder about wanting to prove that his way is going to work. Damn the torpedoes. I'm going to do this, and that's it. And he's been incredibly stubborn with his approach at LAFC and once again at Toronto FC about how he wants to do things. It's just that Bob Bradley seems like he's got his head down and he's trying to just do things one way, his way, and whatever the results are, the results are.
Yeah, and he had success at LAFC, and I'm honestly really surprised at his lack of success with TFC so far. And I know that he's had some injuries and stuff, but they're an old team. When you look at like their roster, like it's an older team, and they're going to fight for just making the playoffs, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do there around that roster, and he's, I would assume got a big voice in that. So it's on him that it looks the way it does right now.
Okay, so what's the latest with Beyond Goals? What's going on with you and Greg?
Trucking along. We're making good progress with Atlanta United, so we're kicking off a bigger and broader partnership with them, which is awesome.
Very cool.
And we're excited about that, and still doing a lot of individual work. So it's been really good.
Playoff season here in Georgia for high schools, and we were covering
right. I spoke to a team yesterday that's got they're actually a team from Texas, and they got a Final Four game this morning, so they were all pumped for it.
Nice. All right. So
Yeah.
MF Parkhurst on the Twitters, at BG Mentoring on the Twitters. Cap, thanks for handling some tough topics this morning and trying to put it into a mentoring prism for us. Thanks for hanging out as you always do. We'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good, John. Enjoy the weekend. Abster, I would be for no more national anthems before games.
There you go. So, Abby, you have your answer. Cap, we'll see you in 2 weeks.